Hey everybody, JV Vela here with HUCLA's Reasonable Doubt, here with my friend, buddy, co-counsel, and lawyer extraordinaire, Justin Harris.
What's up, man?
How you feeling?
Good. Like we're all back in the studio. It's just us. Our guests are online.
Well, we have big State Rep Gene Wu on the show tonight. How are you doing, State Rep Gene Wu?
Yep. Good, man. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. How are y'all?
Good,
Great.
good. So, from what I understand, you're on the lam. Kidding.
Yeah, the governor has threatened to arrest and then corral and cage us.
Oh.
Because why? I mean, this is what, your second or third dozen interview of the week, but for those people who just watch public access and haven't heard, what's going on?
So what happened is earlier this week, Democrats, more than 55 of us left the state, and we broke quorum, which is a procedural move in the legislature to deny any further passage of any bills. And this is a procedure that's provided in the state constitution, provided for in the rules of the Texas House. And we used it as the nuclear option because we needed to stop a pretty repressive, rollback of voting rights across the state.
And this is a special legislative session. What's a little bit of that? What's that mean? Tell us a little about that.
So only the governor has the ability to call special sessions, and usually we reserve them for emergencies, such as the one we didn't call for after Hurricane Ike. And such as when we have a massive budget crisis or something like that, but we were expecting to call one later on in the fall for redistricting, but because Democrats blocked this bill and blocked some other bills during the regular session, the governor has decided to use this as a political pawn and to fix a crisis of his own creation by vetoing the entire budget of the entire branch of the legislature of the state.
Now,
but the crisis of his own creation, are you referring to him vetoing Article 10, or are you talking about the voting the voting rollback bill?
Well, both, actually. So I've said from the very beginning that this bill to restrict people's access to the polls is their top priority. Has always been the Republicans' top priority. It sure the hell wasn't fixing the grid or fixing schools or anything like that. This is their effort to stay in power just a little bit longer. And in order to make sure that we would need a special session, the governor line item vetoed the entirety of Article 10, which is the 10th segment of the state's budget. And that budget, that Article 10, funds the entirety of the legislative branch, not just our salaries, not just the salaries of our staffers, but also the legislative budget board, the leg council, the legislative library, the grounds crew, the people who cook the food, the people who clean up after us, everybody.
So Greg Abbott's not very popular in that building right now.
I think maybe privately
hey.
Representative Ann Johnson.
Very unpopular.
Hey,
what a welcome.
State Rep Ann Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, everybody. Hi.
Hi, guys. Hi, Gene.
We just doubled
Double
the
the
number of
trouble.
people. Yeah, we just doubled the number of people who are virtual.
Is it really that palpable? Are the feelings between that visceral really that's going on now? I mean, I'd imagine.
Look. This is. I think for you all to understand how bad it is, right?
Oh, you left.
Oh no.
Okay, well, you guys are just on vacation. You guys are having fun in DC. We haven't seen our kids. I haven't seen my kids for 6 months because of the regular session. I've been burning through my savings for all that time because I wasn't. I'm court appointed, and so if I'm not in Houston, I don't make money, right? So I'm burning through my savings doing this, and we're stuck here in DC. There's people who left their kids behind. There's people, I mean, Celia Israel is supposed to get married today.
Wow.
This is her wedding day, right? There's people who have infants. There's people who are about to have kids born. There's people who are supposed to be taking care of their elderly relatives. And we all gave that up. And that's how serious this is. This is how much of a nuclear option this is. All of us are risking being arrested, being jailed in order to do this.
Well, I think we have a clip of State Rep Ann Johnson. Maybe we can run that. I think you posted something. When Mark lines it up, I could see that you all were taking a huge step. Did y'all ever think y'all would be faced with something like this? And how did you make the decision to do it? Like, what gave you that strength to do something like that?
And
Well, Gene, yeah. So I was honored to be on the Constitutional Committee to evaluate some of this legislation. We not only had the voter suppression bills, but we also had the bail reform bills. And so trying to figure out what we were going to do and going forward, we had a 23.5-hour hearing. We started Saturday morning at 8 a.m. We went all the way until 7:35 the next morning. And on the voter bills, we had more than 400 people that came to testify to say that because of their disability or other issues, that the current law was going to make it harder for them to vote. There were about 50 people that said they liked the idea of this legislation. And despite that overwhelming support of telling their personal stories about how this went back to before we had the civil rights movement, before we had voter rights, the suppression that it was going to have for communities of color and others, it didn't matter. We offered amendments to try to fix things, and they all went down on party lines. And so it became very clear that this special session was a suppression session and that they didn't have any interest in working with us. So I fortunately left that morning, drove home, and took a nap because I'd been up for 2 days. And then I heard from Representative Wu, and he is on the leadership team, and the body had decided that the only tool we had left constitutionally was to break quorum. And so we were able to leave Texas, but we really felt this weight. And I think it's pretty amazing when you think about it. You have more than 50 members, and a lot more than 50, that have broken quorum, and we come from all over the state. We have diverse backgrounds, but we are all unified in recognizing that this is really a truly moment in history and time where the fabric of your democracy is on the line. And so to pull all these folks together and get us out of the state before we could be effectively arrested and thrown in our chairs for the Republicans to vote in the manner they wanted, I think it speaks volumes about this moment and where we are and how much we have to fight back.
I think we got this clip. Let's play this clip.
That was me pointing. Did Mark tell you? Oh, I got her clip.
So honored to be in this job. I felt the weight of this moment when I got elected, but I never knew that it would get to this point. But I am grateful that I am here, because having a Republican extreme governor who's trying to shut down the most vulnerable in our community, like my nephews with special needs, people of communities of color that are essential workers through the night who can't vote, and the idea that I can be here as the individual that he can target to fight with, that he can threaten to arrest. I am grateful that I have the support and love of my family and the strength to say, come on, because my presence here allows the vulnerable to be heard. And if having a Republican extreme governor threaten an arrest for me to stand up for them, then I'm all in.
I am all in too.
That's great.
I am all in too. So talk to us about it. Y'all have to be one of the two. The whole legislature can't be made up of lawyers, right? I mean, and then certainly it's not made up of lawyers that were both practicing in Harris County. How is it? Because I know you all have known each other for years, and you all have history together, and now you all are, representing the people.
Breaking quorum together.
Breaking quorum together. How cool is that? talk to us about that. I know you both have ties to South Texas College of Law, which all of us are alumni of. A wonderful, fabulous school, producing state reps and great lawyers. Do you all ever? I mean, how is that? How is that relationship of y'all being? Number one, are there a bunch of trial lawyers in the legislature? And number two, both of y'all being not only prosecutors but also defense attorneys, and then a lawyer overall, and then taking that to the legislature. How do you fit in that group? I'm so curious.
Well, Gene just fits in everywhere. So, I mean, I'll let him describe, but Gene is one of the senior members who's been around now for 10 years. And so everybody knows Gene Wu and knows his history because he's been advocating these issues for a decade. I'm glad to be the newbie. But out of our group, we have a number of professions covered. We have nurses, we have a pastor, we have real estate agents, we have everything. And it is amazing that since we have gotten here, more have joined us. And so this is clearly going to be a moment for us personally, where the relationships and friendships that we had that were already really strong and strong enough that we would leave the state together in a moment's notice. I imagine that these are going to be lifelong friends. And we've really, it's been amazing since we've gotten here. Like yesterday, we were in the car going someplace, and the Uber driver, when we were getting out, said, "Hey, thank you." And then I've had other folks that have stopped and said, "Are you one of the Texas Democrats?" And they say, "Thank you." And so I think we really understand, and hear more colleagues that have gotten back. We understand how important this is. And so even though we're very different, we're all very united and proud to be together.
Do y'all, go ahead, Gene.
No, just you know, if you guys want some fun stuff instead of just like sad, depressing stuff about the legislature, and we'll ask, and even if they don't ask, that she was my mock trial coach back in Tough, Texas. She was already a felony level prosecutor when I was in law school, and then but I got elected first, so you know, haha. The legislature is actually made up of a lot of lawyers, but very few lawyers who practice criminal law. I'm pretty sure I am the only one who actively practices juvenile law. I think Anne probably has a few cases here and there, but she's mostly adult. I don't take adult cases, and I think there's maybe there's maybe a few other attorneys who do CPS as well, and I'm definitely the only one who does juveniles and CPS. So criminal law in the legislature has always been very difficult because it's usually just a handful of us trying to explain to like 140 other people, this is a really bad idea, and here's why. But most people don't care. But having Anne here, having Jasmine Crockett and a few other people who just came in who actually understand criminal law has been just a world of difference. And it was so appreciative of their knowledge and their advocacy. It's made us such a big difference.
Well, so it's interesting when we were talking before the show, you ticked off some of the things that the governor has authorized for the special legislative session to address. And, you know, the Texas electricity grid is not one of them, which is an emergent situation.
Yeah.
But bail reform is. Can y'all talk a little bit about what some of the things that the Republican caucus is seeking to reform with our just wonderful cash bail system?
So, Gene, if you want, I'll start since I was on that committee.
Yeah. Go.
It's not bail reform. The bill is not bail reform, and that's the challenge. If we want to have a legitimate conversation around bail reform and what we need to do, we need to have it. What we saw with this particular piece of legislation is this mass detention bill. It has taken away, while it claims to try to follow the O'Donnell decision, it actually strikes at the heart of what O'Donnell was saying, which is that we don't want to have people mass detention because you don't have wealth. And we've gone from the idea of an intake bail schedule of money to now another provision of a report that they want to do, which takes back into consideration criminal history. And so it needs work. We need to do something with it. But, there's a misperception out there because the other side is really using what's currently happening in Harris County. The fact that we have a high crime rate issue at the moment, and we've got a lot of cases on backlog, but they don't talk about Harvey and they don't talk about COVID. And those are two very real factors that you need to look at part of what's happening in Harris County. And then they talk about violent offenders and violent crime. And I think we all agree. We want to be able to solve the problem around violent offenders and not having them out hurting other people and protect community safety. But this bill wraps up a Class B misdemeanor and up. So when people say, oh, this was just going to address violent offenders, no, it was going to address every potential offense that could come into a county or criminal court, which y'all understand.
Right.
And so it was a huge net. It would have led to mass detention. It would have led to more problems in our intake process and how we move people out. I believe it would completely stop cite and release. And so even those low-level marijuana offenders or low-level nonviolent offenders, it would again trap them up in the system for days. And so it was not going to result in public safety. And that's one of the biggest issues and concerns that I know I had with it.
Yeah, you know how they call when they talk about keeping people from voting, they call it election integrity. It's the same thing. So I would really ask y'all not to buy into the lie, not to use their terminology. It's a fraud. Their voting bill has nothing to do with election integrity, and what they're trying to do on this bill has nothing to do with actual reform. Of any kind.
That's fair. And I don't mean to buy into it. What little I've heard about it that's intelligent and not just reactionary, wholly against.
So they're trying to co-opt language that is bipartisan, that there's people on both sides of the aisle who are aggressively and eagerly trying to do actual bail reform and have spent a decade working on it, and they're trying to co-opt the language and the terminology.
Yeah, I would say Speaker Joe Moody, or former Speaker Joe Moody, he's been working on bail reform for years, and he's had bail reform bills that he's been trying to get through for years, and they've never made it. This year, I think we passed 73 criminal justice reform bills out of the House and sent it over to the Senate. And I don't think, but maybe at best, a handful came back. And so they have completely hijacked the term without any intention in addressing the cash bail system.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned you can't talk about this and use Harris County as an example without putting it in the context of Harvey and COVID. And the courthouse is still under construction from Harvey repairs right now. We're coming up on August, will be 4 years.
Yep.
And there's still courtrooms when you walk into, there's yellow caution tape across all the gallery. You can't even walk into the courtroom because of COVID. I think that's an important context to take Harris County into example of. And I think it has ripple effects across the state because there's so many attorneys who work in Harris County. And then when you go out to these outlying counties, you're having to work your schedule around that. You're having to do other things, even though they may not be as affected or taking it as seriously, depends on the way you look at it, as Harris County has. So I think that's a very good point, Representative Johnson. I want to ask a question. This is a little bit back. What's it been like? Two questions. This is kind of from a personal standpoint. When you're on that plane waiting to take off, was there I imagine it was a little bit kind of exciting, but also from like an anticipatory standpoint, you didn't know what was going to happen. Did y'all think you were going to maybe not get off the ground?
I have to say, I was driving back into Austin, and Representative Wu, I don't know if you had the same experience, but there was actually a SWAT standoff near the airport. And so as I'm trying to come into town, the roads are shut down, there's a big SWAT van, and I thought, oh no, don't tell me this is, somehow it's gotten leaked and this is for us. It was not, it was a totally unrelated, just another gun issue where they were there. But I was very anxious and apprehensive about whether or not we were going to be able to get out of town, because I knew that if we couldn't, we were going to be arrested and thrown in our chairs, and nobody would have cared what we had to say or what our vote would be. And so we knew the only way we could stop it was to physically get out of town. And so I don't know about you, Representative Wu, but I was actually, you and I were in two different spots. I forget. I forgot. But I was really happy when the wheels picked up and we were out of the airport. And it actually got leaked before we got there. And so there was some concern about whether or not we were going to be able to get out of town in time. And so it was a little, there was a lot of anxiety for a number of members at that point. What about you, Representative Wu?
I think I was actually more scared for them. I came separately. So I was in with my family in Puerto Rico. We took a short little break trip because that was for our first vacation in like 2 years. And so I was scheduled to fly back that morning, and my plane actually touched down right before they got to the airport. And so I was blacked out being on the plane, and I didn't have any, wasn't able to text anybody or call anybody. And so like the whole plane trip, I was like just sweating bullets for them because, that's the bulk of the membership. And if they get pinched, that's it, we're done. But luckily, as soon as I landed, I got a hold of a few members, and they said like, "Oh, we're about to take off. We're about to board the plane." And I'm like, "Phew!" And as soon as I touched down, got my luggage, drove my butt home from Bush, and then went home, packed, and then went straight back to the airport and got on a plane for DC. And I didn't land in DC till like 10:30, 11 or so.
So you had to you land in Houston not really knowing what you're going to do, and you have to turn to your family and tell them, I'm getting on another plane, I'm not going to Austin, I'm going to DC.
We had known, I actually had booked the flight the night before, so, I talked to my wife, and my kids are too little to really understand, so, we knew what was going to happen, we knew what the drill was, and so we were planning out, like, minute by minute of how long can I stay home, do I have enough time to eat, and what can I, and just all that stuff.
What was it like meeting the vice president?
It was cool.
Yeah?
I mean,
was it meaningful, or was it just kind of like her glad-handing folks?
If you look at the pictures of that meeting, I'm about 2 people away, and I was dead tired.
Yeah.
I was exhausted, and you can see it on my face. And I looked like I was half asleep on half the stuff, and I looked like I was constipated in the other picture. So, it was an exciting meeting, but like I'm pretty pissed off I have to be here.
Sure.
Right. I was pissed off that we had that. We're grateful for the meeting. Honored. I'm privileged to have the meeting, but the fact that we have to have that meeting. Like, really pissed me off.
Let me just say, Gina and I don't want to be here doing this. We want to be back in Austin dealing with grid, healthcare, and other issues. And so to recognize that we are in this spot between Governor Greg Abbott, who's just doing everything he can to appease Trump, and then on the other side of that, recognizing somebody like Vice President Kamala Harris, that recognizes from a long history that this is way beyond partisanship and has to do with democracy. And so it was an honor to be in that room with her. And I think it speaks volumes to what we were able to accomplish and do, that she was one of the first people to show up to say, we hear you and we hear who you're here to stand up for. Sure. And we're going to do everything that we can. But Gina and I are in the same position, and all of us are in the same position. We wish we were in Texas. We just wish we were in Texas doing the business that you guys care about and not the agenda of Abbott.
Well, and that's what's kind of crazy from a political standpoint. If he had just put the grid on the agenda, right, then he could flip the whole script. He could slip all this voter stuff, the bail non-reform. He could slip all that into a special session, but he could make the script about we need them back here to vote on, updating our electrical grid and protecting Texans from the freeze and from severe heat weather. And, you know, it's such a transparent thing that it seems like he's doing.
I think, but I think you kind of hit it, right? I think you kind of hit what this is really about. No, he talks about, oh, we care about retired teachers, we care about foster care kids, and all this stuff. By the way, they were the ones that killed those bills during the regular session, right?
Right.
So, you know, if he really cared about those things, Governor Abbott could right now saying, I'm taking this election bill off the call because this is the only thing that is keeping us here is this bill that penalizes our constituents, right? And takes away their civil rights. We care about it enough that we are here breaking quorum, being away from our families, being away from our jobs, losing money every single day. If you care about those things and you truly are honest about caring about those things, you could just say you're going to take this bill away, take the bill off the call, and everything's done.
Sorry, JV. So let me ask this: is there open dialogue between the leadership of the caucus and the governor's office about that? About what it would take to get y'all back? Is there any open dialogue at all, or is everyone just talking to the media and doing interviews like this?
Yeah. So there's actually a great Christopher Hook's article on the Texas Tribune about this. And when I first got elected, the governor was Rick Perry. And when I first got in, this was after a horrendous budget session. And we came back, we have some more money. The Republicans wanted stuff, the Democrats wanted stuff, and like shit was about to blow up, right? And Rick Perry basically said, whoa, everybody calm down. And he had a closed door meeting with the Republicans, he had a closed door meeting with the Democrats, and he worked everything out. But Governor Abbott has never spent a single day actually in the legislature. So he doesn't know how to like, hey, guys, come on, guys, let's try to work out a deal. He doesn't know how to horse trade. And we've dealt with this for years now where he's trying to, and this is why he doesn't have Republican friends. Like a lot of Republicans very quietly in the legislature hate him because he basically grabs them by the scruff of the neck and shoves them to the floor and says, you're going to do this. And they don't appreciate that.
No, who would?
Right?
Wow. So the answer is no, there's no dialogue.
No one, look, from the very beginning, Democrats compromise. Of course, oh yeah, sure, we'll compromise, we'll do stuff. All lies. And even if they offered compromise today, which we're still asking for, I'm not sure we can take them at their word. Right. Governor Abbott would need to say, I'm taking this off the call.
What compromise would that be?
And I've been talking too long.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of we offered about 6 amendments. And so you're going to see in this voter suppression bill, for example, they took off drive-through voting. They took off 24-hour voting. We saw how successful that was in Harris County. And when I say successful, I mean it just led to high voter turnout. Republicans won the election, right? And their Republican Secretary of State said that election was safe, secure, smooth. And so it doesn't feed into the narrative somehow something happened that was wrong. We just saw that it was successful in getting a bunch of people out. And they fear that ultimately. And so they want to cut out drive-through voting, 24-hour voting, which was incredibly useful in Harris County and which is needed in Harris County. We have 4.7 million people. We have people that work multiple shifts, and our city is literally open 24 hours. And so it made sense for us to do it. May not make sense to do that in Chambers County. So Chambers County can do whatever they want. Let's get it back to local control. Let the local officials determine what works for them as far as their hours and method of just access. We've got a lot of stuff in there, and I don't know if we've talked about it on this call, but there's a lot of criminalization to voters and election workers versus poll watchers. And so y'all may remember that about 2 months ago, there was a group that went online. It was a very partisan group, and they basically made a call and said, hey, we need those of you from outside the city. We need to recruit you guys into the city to be poll watchers. And they circled on the computer with their mouse an area around our urban center of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. That is our traditionally highest African American turnout. It's a site of a concept of civil rights. And they said, this is where we want you guys to go to watch them. So let me tell you about these poll watchers under this law. I remember as a little kid, my mom would take me to vote with her. It was one of the best days that, was my greatest memory. And remember back in the day when you go in that box and there was that big curtain that would come around you? Mm-hmm. You still see it when you see other states voting in that big curtain where you go and you cast your vote. There's no curtain. This partisan poll watcher can stand over your shoulder and they can watch you vote. And so that's one of the things we push back about. Can we at least have a 6-foot rule? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Where can the watcher stand? And they go, nope, we're not going to restrict any of that. So you've got the criminalization of honest, genuine mistakes by voters and election workers. And on the flip side, this partisan poll watcher can start engaging in illegal election activity and harassment. And the poll worker has to give them a warning. Wow. They can't kick them out. They have to wait for a second time. And if a voter came over and said, hey, that guy just came up behind me and said something derogatory, told me something, the poll worker has to see it themselves for 2 times before they can call the police.
Is there any way we can hold the poll workers accountable? The
poll worker can be criminalized. The poll watcher cannot.
That's
so
crazy.
There's a difference between a watcher and a worker. The worker who's trained and takes an oath can be held to criminal responsibility. The partisan poll watcher, like the ones they're trying to recruit from outside to come into the urban centers, they almost have complete access around the polling place. There are other issues with the mail-in ballots and the restrictions they're trying to put on that our election administrator came in and said, look, I don't know how you want me to do this. You want me to open the ballot, but another law says don't open the ballot. Again, if they were to do something wrong, they're facing a 3rd-degree felony, 2 to 10 years in prison. So there are a lot of problems with the language that when you just sit down and look at it and contrast it, you say, look, we can't do this. It doesn't work. And so if they want to have a legitimate conversation around issues of election process, let's have it. But that's not what they've engaged in. And so, again, let's talk about, and I think you mentioned this, I heard you when you were talking earlier, do you want to truly negotiate? Why don't you get away from your unconstitutional act of defunding the co-equal branch of government? That would be a really good place to start and say, you want to talk fairly? Why don't we not hold 2,000 state employees and constituent services hostage because the governor didn't get something he wants? Again, that's a fundamental issue. It's never been done before. And I don't think it should become a normal act or process that after each session, we threaten to destroy people's jobs until you get the bill that you wanted. That's not the way this is supposed to work for democracy.
So your Republican colleagues, what's their take on these things that y'all are raising these objections to? I mean, Greg Abbott wouldn't sign the animal cruelty bill because it over-criminalizes, hurting animals and pets.
Yeah.
But
people that put chains on their dogs.
Right.
So he stands up for the people that'll put chains on their dogs.
But why?
Right?
But what do your Republican colleagues say about the points that you just raised? I mean,
no, that's the problem. And this is the exact manufacturing that they're going for. So this is not just a Texas thing. This is legislation that's across the nation in every single red state. And what they've done is they've learned that in the past, if you come out and put a poll tax in the law, the Supreme Court doesn't really like that.
Right.
But what if you didn't take what if you took that poll tax and you split it up into hundreds of little tiny pieces, right? And each of those pieces looks innocuous, it looks boring, people don't really understand it, it's hard to talk about. But as communities start voting, the people with a lot of resources, they may pick up a couple of those pieces and say, oh, this is no big deal, right? But the point of how this is directed at Black and brown communities, at immigrant communities, at poor communities, at the elderly, at the disabled, the point of that, how they do that is, it doesn't have to be a barrier that is high enough to block everyone, but it's high enough to block just a few people. But in Texas, with 11 million voters that voted in 2020, if you can block 0.1%, that's a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah, change election
right?
outcomes.
And that's the entire point. Their entire point is to make it as they argue that, oh, I don't see what the big deal is. This is, we don't want to talk about 24-hour voting or drive-through voting. Like a lot of places didn't do that. The stuff that's really dangerous, is like your requirements or affidavits. It's the criminalization. It's all the things that say, like, if you are not a person of means, you don't have your own vehicle, you don't work in a job where you can take off in the middle of the day, if you need assistance, your barriers to entry are much higher. And the whole point is, again, not to block everybody, but to block enough people. They put in 1,000 little things. It's a death by 1,000 cuts.
It's that, what's that cartoon? It's like, they're leaving Texas, and that's not fair because we got to vote on the unfair voting bill. You seen that one?
That's a cartoon. That cartoon.
It's a cartoon. No. It's hilarious.
You got 4 kids under 10, so you see cartoons that we don't.
It's just, you guys have to do, y'all have to do what you have to. So leaving, what is that effectively, what's the result by leaving, right? You're breaking quorum, but what does that mean? And how long can the governor just hold everybody hostage without pay?
You talked about what it would take to get you back. What will it take? How long can you stay if it doesn't happen?
How long can we stay where? In D.C., or how long do we have to stay out under this process?
Both.
How long are they going to?
So, how long are they going to come after us? They're going to come after us until August the 7th at midnight. And so that's when our session ends, and there is a call on the House for this session. And so this is the challenge for us, is that, unless the governor decides that he wants to truly work with the people that represent half of Texas on issues that Texans care about and start working, he has left us in no position but to be out of the state. We cannot, just as you said of the cartoon, and I haven't seen it, but we can't merely be present so that he can accomplish taking away the freedom to vote. That's not our oath. Our oath that we took was to take a stand on behalf of our constituents and the Constitution. We do not take an oath to do what Governor Greg Abbott asked us to do. That's not our role.
You had a town hall tonight, didn't you, Representative Johnson?
I did.
What are your constituents saying to you about your decision and what you're doing?
So they're saying thank you. Most of the folks in our district understand how significant this is, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. Unfortunately, a number of our colleagues are getting harassment, threatening, people that are calling their official phones and leaving disgusting, racist messages. And that's, when I hear those, it reminds me of why I'm here. Because if these people are so emboldened and empowered that they will call an elected official's government line and leave the message they're leaving there, imagine what they will do to other people in a polling place.
Right.
And of course, this is disproportionately happening to our colleagues who are from communities of color. And so if these folks are that empowered, imagine if this bill passes and they can, quote, watch every poll across the state of Texas. And so our constituents are saying thank you. They get the importance of this moment. And I'm getting some responses that are, again, rude and everything else, but these are not people that are even from our district or from Texas. These are people that are just angry that we actually have the courage to step up against something that the Republicans and Donald Trump want done.
Thank you all.
So there has to be, is there y'all leave to DC, but there has to be like a point person out there helping, right? Like who's the contact down there? Up there, right? Because it's a big deal. You guys leave, you leave, uproot your lives, go to DC. I'm playing it out in my head like a movie. Like,
do y'all have like one floor on the motel?
Yeah, like who's the contact down there?
You open your door at 2 a.m. and Gene's walking down the hall in his boxers to get more ice, or like what? I mean, what's it like? What's it like there? Is there somebody like setting meetings during the day? Like more seriously, is there someone setting meetings during the day and coordinating media outreach? Like what kind of organization is there?
Yeah, so obviously we have House Democratic leadership. I mean, Chris Turner is the caucus chair. We have Tony Rose is the vice chair, and we have other members, more senior members, who have taken a leadership role. We have some freshmen who have taken leadership roles. It operates like what happens when you have a group of adults say, like, we need to make decisions. Some people want to do stuff. Some people just want to be told what to do. It all works out. We have staff from MAUC, we have staff from HTC, we have staff from the Legislative Black Caucus. They're all here helping out and doing things and arranging things. And we're very grateful for our staffers.
And let's also say we are up and out at 8:30 in the morning. And so, it is 9:40 here in DC. And a number of our colleagues are still around here. Everybody is working really hard, not only to do the job of trying to reach out to members here in DC, but to stay in contact with people back home doing stuff like this. And so we every day have a full schedule of breaking up as groups and going to do what we need to get done for the day. And so there has not been from the moment we all got back together, there has not been a moment of downtime.
Are y'all up there in a skeleton crew, or have you brought your whole crew and y'all are just up, sticking it out together?
Yeah, there's few staff up here. There's some that have come up, which is fantastic. But really it is like last night, we were all having dinner together and I looked around and Representative Wu was picking up the dishes and taking them around. And so,
awesome.
we really are, but the amazing thing is there's more than 50 of us. And there are more than 50 of us together. But we are all pitching in and doing what we can at different levels. But the schedule is rapid and changing. It's, as we like to say, it's very fluid. But we are constantly in motion, trying to ensure that people know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Have you found any big allies up in DC?
Like the vice president.
Vice president. But like, who are the insides? Like, who are the?
And how can they help?
Right. Like, who are they?
I want to say that most of the Democrats who are here in DC are really big fans of ours now.
I bet.
For a lot of people, we brought light to an issue that they've been trying to talk about for a long time. But because, because Republicans purposely make it boring, make it dull, make it hard to understand, the issue hasn't really galvanized in the public. But us making this big break, coming up here and making a big deal of it, and having Abbott like threaten to arrest and jail us, that's done wonders. I mean, it's no longer just a national issue now. Like international news is coming and interviewing us and talking about this stuff. And Congressman Al Green, Lizzie Fletcher, we have senators who are helping us. Mark Vesey up in Dallas bought us, and then a bunch of other members bought us lunch. Lloyd Doggett, Joaquin Castro, they're all here supporting us.
That's great.
That's
Those are
awesome.
big names.
Hey, how is old Joaquin?
I have to give a big shout out to Beto. Beto is helping raise a tremendous amount of money for us to help us get through this.
He's a fundraising machine in and of his own right. So he's involved with this too?
Yeah.
Good.
I think across the board, Democrats around the nation understands how important this is. Again, this is not a Texas issue. Every single Republican-controlled state in the union is filing this type of legislation. It's already passed in Florida, Alabama, Georgia. The other states will fall, and nobody's really cared about this until it becomes a big spectacle.
Were these things that were done before or were not done and in response to COVID, and now they're just trying to roll them back?
No. So go ahead. No.
Go ahead. No.
And you
well, some are creative things that we figured out in COVID, like 24-hour voting and drive-through voting. And they became wildly popular. We've actually done 4 elections in Harris County with drive-through voting, and now people expect it and want to do drive-through voting. And that was one of the Republicans' responses, which was, well, that was just a pandemic thing. That doesn't mean we need to do that. But I want you to go back and look at Governor Abbott's speech to the legislature when we went back to session. And one of his biggest goals was alcohol to go.
Right.
One of the first things they passed and signed was alcohol to go. So this idea that we can't do things that we figured out in the pandemic, Zoom, everything else, it's illogical. And then there are things that they're, again, taking away. Nothing that we did was against the law. Everything was completely within the law. But because it worked and successful and allowed a lot of people, like communities of color, to turn out, now they want to undo it. The whole thing with the criminalization, the whole thing with changing the mail ballots, it's this drip, drip, drip that we've seen over the last decade. They are always now, since the Shelby County decision, tinkering with the election code. And now they've tinkered with it so much that if you make a mistake, you're subject to a 3rd-degree felony, 2 to 10 years in prison, as y'all know. That has a chilling effect on the involvement, not just in voting, but in the election worker process. Again, distinction from worker and watcher. They've created 2 different systems.
Can we videotape watchers and or workers? Can voters videotape watchers and or workers? That's a question that has been asked.
So that provision has actually been removed from a couple of drafts. So where we are right now, there's no videotaping, and that should apply both ways. There's supposed to be cameras and things like that, and the ballot counting process and the rooms and the places that they're doing it. But this idea that you could videotape somebody voting, that has at least now been removed. And so you don't have that anymore.
Is this
wait. But let's back up a little bit. The point is one of the reasons why we left is because of all the broken promises, because of the breach of trust in what they will be willing to do. The bill that left the House during the regular session was not that bad. We had worked out a lot of stuff. The bill that came over from the Senate was bad, but it wasn't that bad. The problem is, in the middle of the night, they added 23 new provisions, stuff that was unconscionable, and they rammed it through. There's nothing you can do about it at the very end. And this is what we expect them to do again. So as we can say, like, oh, well, the House version wasn't that bad. It's always supposed to be that way. This is the game. This is the ploy. They say, well, we took these provisions out. Fantastic. They will be back. And not only will those provisions be back, there will be something even worse. They will do it exactly the way they did it last time. When it's too late, when there's no way for us to respond to it, when we can't break quorum, when we can't stop it, and they're just gonna sit there, stand in the middle of the road and get run over, you know. So
I assume that this response is something. This is a response to something that you've learned in the legislature. I guess hardball legislation. What was it the last time that made you say, this time we're getting out of here? You've been there for a decade.
But that's it, right? Like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
Sure.
No, I'm sorry. Fool me once. I did a George Bush.
Yeah. Fool me twice.
So, hey guys, we'll give you an example. Critical race theory, which is the gagging of teachers and what they can teach. This is a terrible bill that was brought through in the regular session. And it basically says that teachers cannot talk about current events. They can't talk about what happened in the insurrection. And it just completely gags teachers' ability to teach history, civics. And so we effectively, legitimately killed the bill in the regular session on what's called a point of order. Bill was dead. No time to revive it. All of a sudden, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick brings it back, revives it unconstitutionally, sends it to the governor, and he signs it. And so we have a very vivid, real, painful memory of the fact that they will not follow the rules. And if it's something that's on the red meat buffet and they want it, they're going to find a way to get it. And so it's not just the voter suppression bill right now. Don't forget, they're trying to ban abortion in total.
Right.
They've already given a 6-week ban, and now they want to ban the use of medications like the morning after pill and others. So effectively, Governor Abbott is trying to finally and totally ban abortion. He's also got the anti-transgender children bills up on this special. Children. And so this is where they are. It is extreme. It's nothing more than a primary political highlight reel for them.
So talk about that a little bit more.
That's what we're facing.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Talk about that a little bit more, because Representative Wu was talking about that earlier. I think it was before we went on the air. That involves UIL and NCAA and this anti-trans bill that is being shoved down people's throats, when I don't know of any problems that these. I heard really well someone put it this morning. Greg Abbott's come up with a lot of solutions that don't have a problem, and I maybe botched that too. But
No, you got it right.
That.
He's in search of. You're exactly right. He's got solutions to non-existent problems.
Right.
We do not have an issue with young men attempting to transition so that they can compete against girls. That's a fiction, and it's illogical. And when you ask them, when I sat in on the hearings on the original session, when the bill author came up and somebody asked, how big of an issue is this? I don't know. How many cases do we have? I don't know of any. And so, again, there is no problem in Texas. UIL has been addressing this issue for some time. And I was moved by the countless parents and kids that came up and said, look, this is my authentic child. This is who they are. And the fact that Republicans who claim to be about small government and limited government would want to step in and tell these parents, no, you have to let that child grow up in a body that is not who they are. Again, these attempts at prohibiting parents and doctors from being able to help children achieve their authenticity when they know that they are transgender. These are the kind of attacks that we are seeing. And there's no place for Governor Abbott dealing with women and what they can do over their uteruses. And there's no place in Governor Abbott telling parents that they can't let their children authentically be who they are and get them the medical treatment that they need.
That's incredible. I mean, y'all are fighting for real things. Y'all really are, and I can't believe y'all are out in D.C. And fighting. I know you all. I see y'all at the courthouse. It's just so amazing. I just sat a jury in your former law partner's court like 2 weeks ago, and to this morning I sat another one, and we have pretrial hearings tomorrow, and Judge Anna Martinez, the 179th, and we're starting trial on Monday. And I just remember y'all down here, and y'all still are. I think I just saw you last week. And now
you did.
I think I saw you last week.
You did. You saw me 2 weeks ago, and I wish that I was there with you doing that part of my life, which is to try to do indigent defense and represent the human trafficking victims in juvenile court. But I can't get back to that at the moment because Governor Abbott is holding me hostage. And I'm just one example of the fact that this man has no qualms about holding 150 state reps and 31 senators hostage from their actual lives because he wants something to put on his campaign material against extreme Republicans in a Republican primary.
Well, I hope that when y'all do come back, that you'll come back on the show and like sit in the room with us, because JV and I here alone, we feel kind of like Republicans on the Texas House floor right now. So we're just the two of us. So we'd love to have y'all come back. You've both been on the show multiple times before. So this is really, I appreciate y'all coming on. I talked to both your offices to set this up tonight. I appreciate y'all coming on, and after all the big media stuff y'all been doing, you come on down and hang out with little old Reasonable Doubt.
I'm wondering if y'all y'all have bunk beds and like eating ramen, right? Like that's what you're gonna have to do. No, maybe not. I don't know.
They're not talking about their secrets.
Well, I mean, you have to leave your. I can't imagine not working, not working, not doing anything. I mean, and y'all are working
Disruptive.
out of
We're
your
working.
mind. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Working out of your mind, out in somewhere where you should be somewhere else, and you guys are literally being like held hostage out there. That's
No,
incredible to
we
me.
haven't had any downtime. Most of us have been basically going from 8 to 8 every single day. The last couple of nights, I'm pretty sure Anne's the same way that, I just went back to my room and just fell into bed. Like the first night, the first day, I mean, I was like drenched in sweat because we were walking around outside in our suits. And I was supposed to take a shower before going to bed, and I didn't make it. I mean, I was out.
Have y'all? God, it's just so cool to me. Y'all are walking around the Capitol, cruising. I mean, like fighting for rights and stuff. That's just so cool to me. And behind in the backdrop, the Lincoln Memorial or something, and the White House and D.C. I just think that's so cool.
It's surreal, man. It's like a weird dream.
That's so cool to me.
Y'all going to government buildings for meetings, or are most of these meetings by phone? And
No, we're people are in groups of either 5, 10, or 15 are meeting with. They met with Joe Manchin today.
oh, really?
Yeah, leadership.
He needs a little help. Tell him to like.
Yeah,
Never mind.
look, the whole point of us being here is to move the needle,
Right.
right? Whether it's a little bit or a lot, the point is to move the needle.
So who do you think's gonna blink?
I don't think it's a blink issue. I think it's let's find what common ground we have. Let's go with that.
Because
Right?
Abbott's got nothing. Like I listened to him this morning on the Texas Standard on NPR, and his arguments against what y'all are doing is that the United States Constitution, first of all, cedes voting power and authority to the states, not the counties. That was literally an argument our governor said, and that there's nowhere in the Texas Constitution is there a guaranteed right to drive-through voting and 24-hour voting. Those are his main arguments against this. He's got nothing.
So
Yeah.
then you play it out. So for example, in this bill, smaller rural communities of 1,000, they are given 4 hours to vote every day in early voting. Those with 55,000 are given 9 hours to vote. In fact, they've upped the amount of time that smaller rural communities can vote. And they strip the large urban communities where we have 4.7 million people from 24-hour option down to 9. And so the state is saying that a county that has 55,000 people can function effectively as the same as 4.7 million for purposes of getting your election out. You remember he took Harris County and gave us one ballot box.
Right.
As Amy Klobuchar likes to say, we have more people in Harris County than she has in her state. And that would be like having one drop-off box in an entire state.
Sure.
And so when he says this, he's wrong. The law that was applying to the states allowed each county to have rules that were able to sufficiently provide voter access in each county. What he is doing now is stripping the urban, larger communities from access to the ballot box.
Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association State Rep Ann Johnson, State Rep Gene Wu, thank you so very, very, very much. It's such a privilege and honor to have all of you here. With that, Justin, why don't you send us out?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. This is a great show. Thank y'all very much for taking your time and for doing what you're doing. Keep it up and keep us updated. Till next time.